the Pediatric Lounge, a podcast taking you behind the door of the physician's lounge to get a deeper insight into just what docs are talking about today. From the clinically profound to the wonderfully routine and everything in between.
Hello, George. It's Tuesday afternoon, and I'm with a dear friend. He's known as the best pediatrician in Loudoun County in his office, and it is a joy to record with you today.
Yeah, welcome, Dr. Damon Moore. The topic that we're going to be discussing today is an interesting one. 50 years of serving the Loudoun County children.
Dr. Moore is the best pediatrician in Loudoun County. He got coined that term by a great friend of ours, Dr. Louis Gold. He's also a talented singer, husband, father of 2 children. And pediatric healthcare just celebrated 50 years of serving my community here out in Loudoun County, Virginia. He is a phenomenal human being. He is a Rhodes Scholar, graduated from Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, and then went out to Seattle Children's Hospital and did his residency there before coming back to Virginia to serve the kids of Virginia. Damon, it's a joy to be with you. Thank you for having me in the office. And we always start with, why did you become a pediatrician?
I want to thank you, Herb, and I want to thank you, George, for having me on today.
Yeah.
I became a pediatrician really because of 2 men whose last names is the same, Siegel. Jack Siegel, who was my pediatrician. I went to him until I was 19. He has the record of having served the longest as a practicing pediatrician in Memphis, Tennessee, which is where my mom and dad would drive me across state lines to see him growing up. And Julius Siegel, who was a psychologist that both of you probably know, used to be with the National Institute of Mental Health in Bethesda. And he coined the term charismatic adult. So you hear about his work in Dr. Brooks and resilience. And so he said that a charismatic adult is an adult from which a child or adolescent draws strength from. And between Dr. Siegel, his presence in my life, his interest in me, and understanding what pediatrics could mean as a career, as I could try to be a charismatic adult for those patients that I took care of, that was really what sealed it for me. I happened to grow up in a home where I had 2 charismatic adults, my parents, and I saw the example that they gave in their lives and how they worked for the betterment of other people. They were both educators, and they always put my brother and me first. So that was the model really for me.
And Dr. Siegel was in practice for a long time, right? He was an immigrant to this country.
He was.
And he was in an independent practice with one partner. And how many years did he practice?
I believe 67 years.
Wow.
Practiced well into his 90s.
Wow. And always joyful?
Well, part of the greatest generation, served in World War II and also in Korea. Thought he originally wanted to be an art teacher, but he felt that the Army needed more doctors than they needed art teachers. And so that's why he went to fight. And always joyful, always asked me, it was important every time I would show up at his office to bring my report card. He always wanted to ask about my courses. He always wanted to see my grades. And even though I had not ever met or seen a doctor of color growing up in North Mississippi at that time, and Dr. Siegel was not of color, he just still believed that I could do that. And he always encouraged me to work as hard as I could and was always very eager to answer any question that I had, and was so excited that I ended up going to medical school. And I actually got to go back after I became a pediatrician and visit him in his office. Surprised him. He was still working. He took me around to every patient room, George, every one, and introduced me as one of his babies who had come back. He was all of 5'2", 6'3". So I've got my arm around this little man, and he's just so proud of me. And I thought it was the weirdest thing because I had just started to practice myself. But now that I've been in practice so many years, I understand how he must have felt.
I don't know, it feels good because I have medical students in my office. And right now, I currently have one student that's a fourth-year med student that I say I saw when he was born in the hospital or nursery. Now he wants to do general pediatrics. And we have a couple of those kids. It's a good story.
So, George, you have a few more years left. You practiced 60 years.
Halfway there.
I know RBK is old, but you weren't there at the beginning. So you have a few more decades to go.
Yeah. You know, what happened with that generation of pediatricians, their shelf life was really long. Most of the partners at RBK retired at about 75. And I've heard of doctors retiring at 80, 85. Nowadays, that doesn't exist anymore. They're done. I think it's the computer that did it.
Honestly, George, I can't see you retiring. I think you're going to be like your old partners. You're just going to walk on over on top of the desk one day, telling people how it used to be done in the old days.
Well, actually, that's what Dr. Kaplan told me. I said, hey, Mike, how long are you going to hang on for and retire? He says, I'm never retiring. I'm going to come one day to work. You're going to see me here. You're going to come and see me in the office, toppled over the desk.
Yeah.
He retired in 75, but he's still kicking.
Damon, take us back to the stories of Dr. Tom McGorry.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Tom McGorry, as you may or may not know, George, was the founder of my practice, Pediatric Healthcare. He founded it in 1974, but he had come to Loudoun County, which is where the practice is, Loudoun County, Virginia. He'd come here with two other men who were pediatricians in the early 1970s. They were the first three pediatric people in the county. They brought pediatrics to Loudoun County, and they were in a group together for a short time before they each became solo practitioners. So in 1974, I only know these numbers because I looked it up for our anniversary. There were about 48,000 people in Loudoun County at the time. By the time I came here in 1997 and was hired by Pediatric Healthcare, the number had increased by 2.5 times to about 125,000. And now it's 440,000 roughly in the county. So that's 9 times as many as when the practice started. Dr. McGorry was old school, but he was very much into learning. He went to every conference. He was always at the AAP conferences. He was big into teaching some medical students as well as other colleagues, certainly me. He was my first mentor here in the county. And I learned so much about his style of being personal, being interested, being involved in the community. He was the benchmark by which I started to practice.
So I have some great memories about Dr. McGorry. When I was going to open the urgent care in Sterling, I had lunch with him. And he told me a story that I'll never forget. He was very pleasant. He was a very genial person, right? You just couldn't help but like him. And he said, there's so many funny stories in this small town, Herb, but you'll do okay. Because we can't work until 10 o'clock at night. So we'll send you all our patients. Is this like with Michelle Riley? Have you met her? I said, yeah, from Ashford Pediatrics. He said, yes. Do you know that when I was opening up the practice, we almost ended up leasing office space in the same building? And Michelle called me and said, Tom, seems like we're going to be neighbors. He said, what do you mean? And she said, I think you're going to lease the suite like right next to us. And he said, oh, Michelle, we don't need to be in the same building. I don't need that building. I can do just fine. You keep that lease and I'll find another place. He was such a gentleman.
Absolutely.
Such a gentleman, such a dear man. So that was, and he did a great job bringing pediatrics here in the old days where they went to C-sections. They went into the ER and took care of the kids with meningitis. They saw kids in the back porch.
Mhm.
It never stopped.
And then he was on call every night as a solo practitioner.
Yeah.
Quite a while.
Yeah. But he left a tremendous legacy in these walls.
That he did.
So many people he touched.
People I see now.
Yeah. He's truly a very generous, affable, likable man. From the moment you met him, you liked him.
And I'm happy to say that many of his children brought their children to us after he left. And that's been a pleasure to take care of them.
Oh, wow. Wow. And so your practice, your pod, is part of a group called Loudoun Medical.
Yes.
And they have, that I know of, 4 pediatric practices in our county. Your practice, Sterling Pediatrics, Ashburn Pediatrics, and Loudoun Pediatrics.
Okay.
I don't know if they have more.
They might. I'm not aware of it.
And that's a huge number of pediatricians. It's probably in the 20s or 30s. And you also have about 350 physicians of all types, not only in Loudoun County, but throughout Northern Virginia.
A physician, then mid-level practitioners too. I don't know what the total number would be, but I would think if it's 350, it probably includes the mid-level.
A lot of clinicians.
Yeah. And you're right. It's not just in Northern Virginia. It's West Virginia. It's parts of Maryland.
Yeah. And it all started in a little hospital, which we're sitting in today. This was Cornwall Hospital.
Yeah, just right around the corner.
Yes. And now it's only offices and an emergency room. And it's a group without walls.
Loudoun Medical Group certainly is. I have been so pleased that our practice could be part of it. We didn't join at the inception, so I don't know a lot about that. We joined in 2007.
Okay.
I think Loudoun Medical Group started around 2000. But we joined in 2007, so we were not one of the first groups to be a part of it, but we joined because we were excited about being part of, as you say, a group without walls, a multi-specialty group where we could see our colleagues and practice medicine in a similar way, trying to practice it in the best way, and know that if we referred to one another, the accountability was there. I knew exactly who I was sending you to. And now, all of these years later, with all of these physicians, it still feels like a small group. And what I like best about it is how it's run. We've got board of directors, we have medical directors, we have our CEO, who used to be just our CFO, but she now is both Mayor Beth Tomasi, who's phenomenal. And I would encourage anyone who wants to know more about our group just to go to our website, lmgdoctors.com, and all the information is there. The other thing, and I don't want to be too long, but the other thing I'm excited about is the charitable group, LMG Charitable Group, which we each year distribute money to nonprofits. And last year, we had 16 different nonprofits that we distributed monies to. I'm excited about this because I'm the chair of the philanthropic committee. I don't get to make the decisions, but as a committee, we make the decisions. And one of the things that we feel strongly about is to try to give monies to those nonprofits that are in Loudoun County, not just all over the country, because there's plenty to be done here.
Right. So I do know this story of LMG because it's a very interesting story. And I think it's worth repeating only for the sake of those that don't know history will repeat their mistakes. In the 90s, when Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton were in the White House, Hillary was trying to destroy medicine and make it all managed care HMOs. And that created a ripple effect through the medical community. And at that time, nobody wanted to do anesthesia residencies or radiology residencies because the thought was that radiology was nothing more than a quality assurance program. The orthopedic surgeon is going to look at the MRI of that hip before he does the surgery. Why does the radiologist need to get paid to look at the X-ray? And anesthesiologists could all be replaced by mid-levels. Why do we need an anesthesiologist in the room? All cost savings effects. And The buzzword was making hospitals smaller and paying them less because they're too expensive. So the CEO of Loudoun Hospital, which was here in Cornwall, decided it was time to move from the center of the small town where we couldn't grow anymore because there was no more land, to move it to Lansdowne where there was plenty of land and make the facility a lot smaller. Because the future was smaller hospitals with a hub of doctors that were employed by the hospital. And so he went out and he employed as many primary care doctors and specialists as he could find in the community. He bought their practices. It was a great tactical move to Lansdowne because it's a much better facility, very controversial in the community. However, all the reforms that Hillary Clinton had in mind were put to death by a friend of mine, Mr. Lee Stilwell, who was the chief lobbyist and governmental affairs person for the American Medical Association. And he quashed that in the Congress. And so now there was a population boom in Loudoun County, and the hospital was too small. And it basically ran out of money. And so Jim Lapsley and another executive at Loudoun Hospital had to run to Inova and get a $500,000 check just to keep the doors open. And they had to decide they had to let go of all the physicians. And they basically went to them and said, look, there's no paycheck coming next week. We bought your practice, your employees, you have a non-compete, you can trash it all. There's no paychecks coming next week. Do whatever you want with your practices. Stay in town, leave whatever you want. And Jim Lapsley, who was the hospital executive for all the physicians, got 40 physicians in Loudoun County and said, we can't just leave. Let's create our own group and let's keep practicing. And that's where LMG started. And it grew from 400 to 350 clinicians. Yeah. Now that's being repeated in the US over and over again, where large health systems are buying practices to feed the beast. And then they find they can't make money in that neighborhood because there's too many Medicaid patients. And they close down the maternity ward, they close down the ER, they close the pediatric ward, and then they fire all the primary care doctors because they have no use for them.
They did that over here on Suffolk County, Long Island, maybe in about 2000 something, where they were buying the little practices and they thought that they could manage it and run it and do things. And then fast forward, then they realized that they can't run it, they can't keep paying for it. They gave the practices back to the original owners.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if there was more exchange of money to take the practice back or whatever it was, but some of those guys they sold and then they got the practice back at the end of the day. So they made some cash on that. The big systems, the pediatric offices are too, I don't know, like children. They're just like all over the place. They can't seem to manage it, or it's maybe there's too many little charges to bother with, so they can't keep up with it. Yeah, I don't know what it is.
They like to make money on the cancer patients and the orthopedic patients.
Yeah,
where it's every claim is for thousands and thousands of dollars. Keeping track of a claim for $100 when you can go get $10,000 from a knee replacement. I'm not faulting them for it. If you tell me, Herb, you can make $50,000 following up on this, or you can make $100 following up on that, I'm going to go for this.
The time is the same. The time's
the same. The effort's the same. But one's going to pay out $50,000, the other one's going to pay $100.
But what I could never really understand was they took over practices that were loyal to them anyway, that were referring to them anyway. So it's not like they changed their referral patterns. If they took you over, you're referring to us anyway. So why bother? Why don't you just leave them be, help them succeed if you can, and then let them continue to refer to you.
That's a greed of humanity, right? It's called FOMO. So they want to own it because they're afraid somebody else will own it. And two, it's called power. So that's a greed of humanity. Humans are drawn to being greedy. And they seek fame and money and power. And when you live your life that way, you often fail. So it's FOMO and greed. That's what drives a lot of this. But it's interesting to repeat the story because I saw it in Richmond. I saw it here. I saw it in Chicago with Rush Medical Center. And I'm seeing it now where it's unraveling. These health systems bought so many doctors and they can't make it work. And they're just dumping practices again. And the real peril for our community, for our colleagues, is that the younger kids have no idea how to run a practice because they were told that can't be done. And so they don't have a entrepreneurial spirit, a hope of being the managing partner. They just want to clock in and clock out.
Yep.
And so we'll have to see how that plays out. Now, there's another adorable human being that crossed our paths. Dr. Louis Gold. Who is Dr. Louis Gold?
He is another mentor, that's for sure. I met Louis because he was in charge of credentialing me and signing off when I came here. And I walked in and he had a military presence, which made sense to me because he was retired military. Do you remember his rank? Was he a colonel?
I don't remember his rank, but I have lots of stories about his military service.
I think he was a retired colonel. But he wanted to make sure I was squared away, and he kept me squared away. And he always had an open door. If I had an issue, I had a question, he was the one person that I felt that I could confide in. And I'll tell you something that I don't mind saying. When my father was dying and I had concerns about how I should help my family deal with the decisions we were making, Louis is the person I called. And he took time out of his day to let me talk through it with him. He didn't tell me what to do. He let me talk it through. And then he says, do you have the courage to do that? And that's all he said to me. And I said, I do. He goes, it's okay. Hear my prayers and let me go. So Louis is someone that I still think very highly of, even though he's retired.
So there's a lot of fascinating stories about Louis Gold, right? First, he was the only male in an office with 50 females.
No, I didn't.
Oxford Pediatrics had all the front desk, all the nursing staff, all the pediatricians were women. And he was the only male.
I don't find that too hard to believe. Even in pediatrics, they're not.
That's pretty hard.
Too many guys that I run into.
To be the only one guy with 50 women in the office every day. That's a lot.
Let me share a story with you that I have held on to. I once had a friend who was going to medical school after her graduate work was done. She was doing a graduate degree but before going to medical school. But I was already in medical school at the time, and we were talking, and she asked me what was I thinking about going into, and I told her I was thinking about going into pediatrics. And she said to me, no one goes into pediatrics. You can't do that. Only women in Laura Ashley dresses go into pediatrics. And I just thought, what a weird thing to say. She ended up going into general surgery, and I'm happy for her, but I was thinking anyone who wants to can go into pediatrics. But I think some people still think that in our field, it's not something where a lot of men are represented. And I've had some deep conversations with people about this. And I asked them, is it because men aren't nurturing? Like, what are you saying? It's just very interesting when I talk with them.
I think it's a payment problem.
Yeah.
So even though we have advanced quite a bit to where, I can't say certain things anymore, it is still expected that the man of the household will be the provider and pay the bills. And it's not always expected that the woman will be the provider and pay the bills. And if you're in medicine, pediatrics is the lowest paid specialty. So people are like, you're going to have a wife, you're going to have kids, you're going to have bills to pay. Why would you be a pediatrician? Or anybody else makes $350. You're not. You're going to start at 120 or 160.
Yeah, that never occurred to me.
That's why.
I did what I would be good at and what I would think.
That's why it's a payment problem.
Interesting.
And so The first recollection I have of Louis Gold was when I just opened up the urgent care, and it was in the evening, and of course, slow, we just opened up. And all of a sudden, this guy with a Texas hat and cowboy boots and Alice walks into my office. And he's the front desk. Where's Dr. Bravo? Tell him Dr. Gold is here. He wants to meet him and walk around the office.
Wow.
Say why, Brian?
Yeah, I think I would have been really intimidated.
And he goes, he shook my hand. He walked around. He goes, I like this outfit. I'll send you my patient. Now I'm like, okay, great. Then we were at dinner at the Country Club where I live in River Creek with him and some of the Pete's ID guys from Fairfax. And Alice was so sweet, kept talking to me in Yiddish. She thought I was Jewish. And all throughout the dinner, she kept saying things in Yiddish and then laughing. And I just laughed because I didn't know what to do. And then Louis and I went to the bathroom. We were literally in front of the stalls, urinating. And I said, Louis, I got a very embarrassing thing to tell you. He goes, what? I said, Ali has been talking to me in Yiddish all night. I'm not Jewish. I'm Catholic. I don't understand anything she says. And he says to me, oh, brother, don't worry about it. I'm a Jew from Texas. My parents had a bookstore in Texas. I was such a hellion as a kid that my mother didn't know what to do with me anymore, so she sent me to the nuns in the Catholic school. So we're basically the same thing. You look like a Jew, but you don't talk Yiddish. I'm a Jew, but I went to Catholic schools. I'll just tell Alice when we get home to talk to you in English, and everything won't be over.
That's funny. Totally believable, too.
That was gold, right?
Yeah, but in Long Island, the pediatricians, there used to be a lot of Jewish physicians out here.
Yeah.
Especially in Reichman, Brown, and Kaplan. They were all Jewish.
Yeah.
And I was the first non-Jewish person that walked through the door. I'm Greek Orthodox, so I guess the Orthodox part of it was like, okay. And then Dr. Riley the next year showed up. He was Catholic. So we have a mixture of everybody.
That's the way it should be.
That's the way it should be, yeah.
No, but there's a lot of Jewish, our forefathers, I don't know why, but if you look at our grandparents in pediatrics, Ralph Feigen, the Krugmans, the guy that ran Duke for a long time, I think even Oski, they were all Jews. I don't know why they felt compelled that it was a good specialty, but there was a lot of them that taught us.
Yeah. I never thought it was just specific to pediatrics, though. I just thought people were in every specialty. People could do every specialty.
Yeah. Yeah. But there was a lot of Jewish people in pediatrics. I still think there's a lot. And so you got to meet one of my other heroes and people I admire a lot. Fascinating human being. He was never a very tall man, but boy, was he phenomenal. What are your memories of Ralph Feigen?
I only spent about 2 hours with him.
Yes.
And it was the hottest day that I've ever experienced. If you could imagine that, George, I don't know how much, but I grew up in North Mississippi. It's very hot there. It's very humid there, too. But I went to Houston for an interview for residency, and that's where I met Dr. Feigen. And by the time I got to him, I looked like I had just stepped out of a swimming pool. It was just, and I was embarrassed. And he just said, hey, that's the way it is here. Don't worry about it. I walked into the room. He came and took me by the hand, and I saw a couch and I saw a couple of chairs. I saw a coffee table in between them. I thought he would sit in one chair. I'd sit in the other. He guides me around to the couch and we sit down next to each other. He puts his arm around me and says, so we really want you to come here. And we just have a conversation just like he's known me all my life. And I felt so at ease and I felt this would be a good fit for me. And it was one of my top choices. I just enjoyed meeting him. I could sense from the beginning, from the minute I walked into the room, how genuine he was. And that says a lot when you have written several things, including the textbook, and you're in charge of this program that you still have time for a person coming in to interview. I didn't expect to meet him. So phenomenal man.
Yeah.
Really cared about his residents.
So we talk a lot on the podcast about relationships, how relationships are so important. Our relationship with our patients, our relationship with our community, our relationships with our colleagues. And I truly feel that part of the amount of burnout we're seeing is that we have dropped the relationship with our colleagues. We don't go to dinner with them anymore. We don't visit their offices. We don't call them when we have a problem. And that humans are about relationships. And Ralph Feigen personified relationships. Everything that was important to him was relationships. With his residents, with other pediatric infectious disease luminaries around the country, with pediatricians. But he was a phenomenal guy. I don't think he was more than 5'2" or 5'3". He was not a very tall man. He had a photographic memory. Of course, everybody knows that he was the author of Feigen and Cherry's textbook of infectious disease, which is a Bible of infectious disease. And he was at some point chairman of Baylor School of Medicine, chief pediatricians for the Children's Hospital. And yet he knew every one of his residents' name, their spouse's name, and their kids' names.
That's true.
And he would talk to you like he was your best friend at a conference with no pretenses at all. And he would always invite you to play tennis with him. But I knew better because he was really a skilled tennis player. He ran 3 miles every morning, and he played at least one match of tennis a day. And I always would say, no, thank you, Dr. Feigen. Come on, Herb, I need a fourth person. I'm like, no, sir, no, thank you. He's like, why not, Herb? I'm like, because you already beat me about the knowledge of pediatrics you have. I don't need to make a fool of myself in the tennis court. I'll take it easy. I'm like, that's not true. You're highly competitive. You will be.
As are you, Herb.
But I was going to get my butt whipped.
Let's just put that out there.
Playing with Dr. Feigen in the tennis court. That's all I need. And so we were at a barbecue in Hilton Head with them in South Carolina. And I brought my son along with me because my son was a little shit. And I said, Dr. Feigen, could you please talk some sense into this kid? He doesn't listen to me.
How old was he at the time?
He must have been 8 or 9 years old or 10. And he goes, what do you mean he doesn't listen to you? I'm like, he wants to be a basketball player. I'm not very tall. His mom's much shorter than I am. We're both nerds. We're both pediatricians. The only hope for us is to study hard and be a lawyer, be a doctor, be an engineer. He's not going to play basketball. And he got down on the kid's eye level and said, son, don't you ever pay attention to your father. See how tall I am? I'm not even as tall as your dad. Yeah, I've written textbooks. I'm the chairman of the department. I consult for George Bush on bioterrorist issues. But I walked onto the basketball court at Columbia University, my first year of college, because I wanted to play basketball. I made the team and I played for 4 years. So you do what you want, son. Don't pay attention to your dad. And if he gets in your way, just let me know. I'll set him straight.
Did you a favor?
I looked at him like, I thought we're pediatricians together. We're brothers. You just threw me under the bus.
Hey, listen, athletes, that comes higher than the pediatrics things. I think
guess.
Responding what you said.
I guess, but he was just like, disregard your dad. Follow your dream, son.
Yeah. You know what, boys? I love this going down memory lane stuff. It's fantastic and all.
He doesn't like it.
But our audience wants to know, what is the secret sauce of that 50-year practice? I haven't found it yet.
Relationships.
Well, we know that. What is his secret sauce?
I would say relationships only you remain in the same place. You can have relationships, but if you're all over the place, it makes it difficult to build something. Like you said, having students now that you took care of that means something.
Right.
That means something. I will have been here 27 years in this practice come Monday. I've only had 2 jobs since residency. The first one was with the National Health Service Corps in my native Mississippi for 2 years, and then I came here. And so when I started here, those patients who were 18, 19 walking out the door are now 45. And some of those other kids are now 7. And when I can see them over and over and have the authority to say, look, I remember you when you were on the table in that diaper, and you've now done something that I don't think we need to be doing. What's up with that? That has some type of, I don't know. Yeah, it really strikes the person because they know that I've been there every step of the way. I haven't missed any of it. And
Right.
I know all of it. I think that's what builds it, just to be here over and over.
Yeah, I know the relationship part. That's already proven. We know that it's an old story. What is the secret sauce to keep your practice going? You had the 2 fellas that started it, right? Who was number 1?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Who's number 3? So you had the guy that started it, right?
But there were 3 pediatricians. They had a falling out. They each opened up their own practice.
Okay.
So that's just the one that I know, and that's Tom McGorry. He started it. There have been other people who've come in through Tom's group, but what keeps us going is that we keep showing up for work every day. And to be quite honest, our affiliation with Loudoun Medical Group, because that allowed us then to be a part of a much bigger group. So we didn't have to worry as much about the day in and day out stuff, the trying to keep the doors open. We could just practice medicine, which is what we continue to do.
Okay. Personally, let me tell you what I think the secret sauce is.
You tell me. I've been waiting for you to tell me.
This practice, Reichman, Brown and Kaplan, RBK, I think it started in 58 in the guy's garage down the street. And Reichman did that for a number of years. He used to make house calls. They'd see everybody in the office. I think I heard that, like where my house is, Herb, used to be a potato farm, right? The end of Long Island ended at exit 52. So nobody wanted to come out here. Then Dr. Brown came in and he started working and he was very popular. And they were, like you guys said, in the community, talking to people, seeing patients. You meet people at the supermarket or wherever. Then they brought over another one. I think his name was Dr. Platnick, who practiced until he was about 90.
That's my plan too. I don't mind going on record. That's my
But
plan.
he broke. They had a falling out, Reichman and him, and I heard. And so he went out and they made another practice. They gave him that practice to deal with, just go away kind of thing. And he practiced forever. He just recently, 5 years ago, closed down the shop. Nobody wanted to take it over because we were going to take it over once, but there was paper galore everywhere. There was nothing, zero, not even prescriptions. Dr. Kaplan came on board and all these guys retired. Another guy came in and Dr. Belvin came in. Dr. Belvin retired, but he's still working. And I came in. This is my only job out of residency. A year later, my friend from residency, Dr. Riley, came in. His only job also. Then 10 years later, we needed another doctor. We got Dr. Nick. His only job. So everybody that came, the people that are the core people had one job, as you say. We came with the idea to come to Long Island, establish roots in the community, build a house, build a future, and basically retire from here. I'm not seeing that with doctors saying, I asked them, what do you want? I remember when I interviewed Dr. Bello had asked me, so you're from Queens. Why do you want to come to Long Island? I says, I don't know, I'm a city kid. I want to move to Long Island. I heard it's really nice, lots of grass, and I want to have a pool in the backyard. That's what I wanted. Young doctors, they seem to be bouncing a lot. They'll stay 2 years, 3 years. I see resumes of people that had 7, 8 jobs in 10 years.
Yeah.
That's we don't even look at those people anymore because we know we're just going to be another number on their resume next year.
Yeah, it's about the relationships again, right?
Yeah.
They're not in it, they're serial daters. They don't want to marry.
Yeah. But it has to do something with the computer technology that created this.
The education they're getting at the hospitals, that they're just, Doctors are not important. You just fill the chart in Epic and move on.
I don't know. I think they're very
I think
important.
that's where it's coming from. Damon, you're part of something that's very interesting called the Master Singers of Virginia. What is that and what do you do there?
Master Singers of Virginia is an auditioned vocal ensemble, mostly a cappella, mostly focusing on modern music. And our goal is to bring people together through transcendent choral experiences, is what we like to say. This ensemble has been around for 30 years, and that's a big deal. And I would say what surprises me is not too many people in my county know about us. I don't know why that is. And so I am now the development chair, and a lot of what I spend my time doing is trying to talk up the group and let people know that they should come and hear us, because I think once they come to hear us, they're going to be back. I persuaded you to come to hear us,
great.
and I knew that you would have a good time.
So it was a great show. I just keep urging George to have at the AAPNCE meeting a bunch of pediatricians playing music together. He tells me it's impossible because you can't practice together. But I think that would be the greatest thing.
I'll jump at the chance, George. I tell you that now.
George would be the vocal. Damon would be the vocalist. You can be the guitar player. Yeah, not going to happen.
Not going to happen. It's too much work.
How can people contribute if they want to donate? Is there a website that they can donate to this?
They could, but what I would say is I'm looking for a couple of things specifically. One would be just to go to Instagram and become a follower. That way you would learn more about us. And you can find us Master Singers of Virginia, all one word. You can go to the website from there. But the second thing is, especially if you live local, become a season ticket holder, because that's what helps us, is having people in the audience. And we do 3 different sets of concerts each year. It's always going to be something that's going to enlighten you and that you're going to enjoy. We did a little bit of Billy Joel for our last concert, and a lot of people weren't expecting that because we did a lot of numbers that they'd never heard of, but it's pretty eclectic. And so I'm proud to be associated with them, and that's how they can help us out. Season tickets, follow us on Instagram.
I bet you that singing part of your life helped with your physician burnout, because you should be the poster boy for burnout, but you're not. Me too. We do other things.
George, I'll be completely frank with you. You were talking about you didn't understand what's up with the doctors and why they're just here and they're there. I think you have to know deeply what you're trying to do in the first place, what you're trying to build. I've known since I was 6 years old that I wanted to be a physician. I didn't know what type until later, but I've just known I wanted to be a physician. Maybe there was a day I wanted to be a firefighter, but then I wanted to be a physician. But I knew growing up that I liked the liberal arts. I was all about music and poetry. And my mom was an English teacher. Culture was how she would always couch things. You have to have culture. And people would say to me, okay, you're going to go to medical school, so you're going to major in biology, right? You're going to major in physics, right? You're going to major in biochem, right? I said, no, I'm going to major in English. And they said, what good is that going to do you? I said, I don't really look to what I want to study as being a justification for my going into medicine. I want to go into medicine because I want to do something good with my life. I want to alleviate suffering, all the typical things you hear in the interviews. I want to do that. But who I am is this person who values all those things that we just talked about. And I see that the world through the lens of a writer or through a musician. I see that there can be great beauty, but also great suffering. And so medicine is my response to what I see. So to me, that's how that goes hand in hand. It's always gone hand in hand. And you're right. So when I am singing, it's not about me. And that's why I think our group is fantastic. I really do. We're a community group, but many people sing professionally and many people don't. But the quality of the group is such that we do really great music. But if there's no one to hear us, I'm thinking, what are we doing? I could be in my own room and make beautiful noise. It's about the relationship again.
Yeah.
We're trying to have you have an experience. And who doesn't want to have live music? You can make all the recordings you want with all of those great instruments behind you. But if I have a chance to hear you live, that's where I want to be, because that's the experience. I sing the national anthem at games because that's a live experience. I don't want to hear some recording. I want to be in the moment. So that's how that works for me. So you're right. That's a big part of why I'm not burned out.
Yeah, me too. I think that has something to do with it. Heck, tonight we're doing this podcast. I got an hour break at 6:30. We have another podcast with a famous gastroenterologist, the day in the life of a pediatric gastroenterologist. Finish that, and I got to go head off for band practice. We have a show on Saturday. Busy guy.
Damon,
I'll go to work tomorrow too.
would you mind if I ask you to sing a little piece?
I would be happy to, because I thought about what I would want to do if you ever asked me that.
Oh, go ahead.
This is a song that everyone knows. 'Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, we'll be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight. Turning we come round right. What I like about that song is you've seen that at presidential gatherings, at inaugurations, but you've also heard moms and dads sing that as lullabies to their kids. It's so American and speaks the truth. Simple gifts. You don't have to do much, but I think as pediatricians, we have an opportunity to do that so often, to provide encouragement, for example, or praise to a child, or even left margins, as Louis Gold would do with people that he's counseling. Those are simple gifts, and they don't take a lot to give.
That's right. That's very beautiful. Thank you, Damon. That was just beautiful. Now, Damon, we had the pleasure of being together at a dinner where we discussed T1D and T1D screening. What were your thoughts after that dinner?
My thoughts were just being so impressed, as I said to you, about your commitment and your passion at taking care of patients. The point that you made that basically, if we can screen effectively, we're going to prevent having someone show up in DKA so that we can diagnose them, which is really the problem with DKA leading to death in some cases. That makes sense to me. And so I think however we can come up with recommendations that work for screening, I would be all for that. And we're already starting to talk about that in my office.
It's wonderful. Wonderful. Now, I'm going to ask you, will you be joining us at the T1D Forum, Orlando at AAP?
I will not be able to go, even virtually. I was looking at that online. I'm here.
Maybe I can twist your arm and get you to at least come down Friday night and come back on Saturday.
Talk after the podcast. I might be able to do that.
That would be wonderful to see you in person down in Orlando. This has been such a joy to be with you again. And remember such great people that have crossed our paths. I'm going to ask you for one last thing. You have a beautiful poem. Would you humor me one more time and read out the poem?
Find it.
And take us home. We'll end the show with that.
I put this on my LinkedIn profile just because this is what I wanted to say. I'm a pediatrician. From the moment I meet you with your child, I join you in becoming a member of a team that is dedicated to being there for whatever life holds. The long nights, the worrying, the illnesses, the traumas, but also the best days, the joys, the accomplishments, the proud moments. I am a pediatrician. When your children grow into adults and leave my care, they'll understand from our relationship that there was no better use of my time or of my talents than my having invested both in them.
That is really awesome. Where is this from?
He wrote it.
Wrote it?
I wrote, yeah.
That should be on everybody's website. That's
Yes.
what we should be
Well,
doing. That's the mission statement.
That's my mission statement. Coleridge said that the poetry is the best words in the best order. And whenever I write something, I try to think, how succinct can I make it, but how complete can I make it at the same time? And I was happy with every word that I came up with there because that's what I wanted to say. And that's what I stand by.
That's brilliant.
And George, I see people, like I said, I see people that I used to take care of. And they walk up to me and I say, did I do it all right? And they go, yeah. And I go, that's my goal, because I want you to go out and be a charismatic adult, because that's what I've tried to be for you. I need you to pay it forward. I've invested in you. I expect a return on my investment, not for me, but somewhere out there, however you choose to do that, because I'm associated with you and I want that to mean something.
You know what?
But thank you for being so kind.
It's these kind of messages that we have to get out there to the new generation of physicians. We're not just computer data entry monkeys and just the provider. We're more than that.
Do you know, a lot of times the truth can be found in film. You remember, he wasn't a pediatrician, but remember Field of Dreams when Burt Lancaster steps off the field to save the child who's choking, and he can't go back on the field again because he's lost his chance. But there wasn't even a choice. A child is choking. You are a physician. You're not going to sit there and say, but I've always wanted to be with these guys and play professionally. No, you walk right off the field without hesitation, which is what he said. He said, hey, if I can't play baseball anymore, fine. But if I couldn't do this, that would not be worth it. And then you look at other films like The Sixth Sense. Remember how that he was a psychologist, not a pediatrician. But again, the difference that people make in lives of children. That child had an issue, and he ended up finding the one person who didn't know he was dead who could help him. That to me is amazing. Or even in Ordinary People, the psychiatrist there who helped the child come to grips with the fact that, yeah, he has survivor guilt, but he could go on. Each time it was a single person who made a difference. Same thing, Good Will Hunting. So again, you see these examples. We have the power to do that every day in our practice, every day, to make a difference. And we shouldn't let anyone tell us that we don't have that power, because we do.
I think what's happening is we do this so often and so frequently, and we just take it for granted as it's just something I do. Not out of the ordinary, I do this all day long. And we take it for granted. Then you got other entities telling you that it's really not that important. So you lose sight of it, I think. And then we need people like you, mentors like you, to pay it forward and teach the next class of doctors how to be a doctor. Herb, remember Dr. Raymond?
Yes.
He was a senior physician. We took over his practice. He worked with us. The one thing that he did for the entire organization, me included, he taught all the physicians, you know what he taught them? How to be a physician. Not the medicine, how to be a physician. Talk to people, engage, behave like a physician. That was the one lesson that we learned from Dr. Raymond. Everybody, me included.
Yeah. Wonderful people that have touched our lives.
Yeah.
Well, George, I can't take any more of your time or Dr. Moore's time.
Okay.
But this is a wonderful show.
Yep.
And I hope we get to be all three of us together somewhere and have a libation, like they would say in the South, together.
All righty.
Thank you, George.
Thank you so much. It was great meeting you.
Nice meeting you.
And just send me the music that you want me to learn, and I'll work on it here. We're both professional. We'll just show up and we'll just do it. That's what people do. It's like Allen Iverson said, practice. We just
I agree.
And not so simple with a full band. It requires some effort.
Like I said, you just tell me.
All right.
All right.
Good to meet you. Thanks.
Thank you for listening. This has been a production of the Pediatric Lounge.
On the show notes, you will find links to our co-host and other important notes, as well as a timetable of the topics discussed today. Don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcast. Leave us a great review, as it helps us greatly. In the meantime, we will see you next week, the Pediatric Lounge. The conversations are not intended as medical advice, and the opinions expressed are solely those of the host and the guest.